I feel like today we really need to have an important conversation. Speaking up about child sexual abuse in family court can and does backfire on the protective parent. The system was not built to protect your child. It was built to manage conflict. Family courts only believed mothers' child abuse allegations less than 1/3 of the time. The family court system was not built to rescue your child from a predator. So the moment you speak up about abuse, right, the script flips. Hello, how are you? I hope that all is well. I've run into this situation over and over again for the many years that I've been doing this work. And I feel like today we really need to have an important conversation. I feel that it's, many different things that are coming up. And it could be from, lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, just lack of general information. But I want to talk about recognizing sexual abuse in children and what to do when you're in family court. Obviously, this is a conversation that's probably going to make many people feel uncomfortable. My point is not to make you feel uncomfortable, but to provide you with some education. It's something that I feel that, nobody really wants to talk about. And when you do talk about it, right, especially in family court, if we're talking about sexual abuse with a child, we're punished for it in family court. And I think most of you know, and I've shared in part of my story, that I am a long-term survivor of abuse, including sexual abuse from my childhood and into my adulthood. Today, I want to provide you with knowledge and tools of what you can do if this is a situation that you end up encountering and how to navigate around it. This topic is important to me because I help so many of you every single day. And I am hearing in many situations signs of SA that are deeply concerning to me. And then I have conversations with protective parents who don't know what to do. As you all know, I am not an attorney. I am not a licensed healthcare professional. I come to all of these conversations with my own personal knowledge and education, my lived experiences, to provide context and strategy to help you move forward. Speaking up about child sexual abuse in family court can and does backfire on the protective parent. And the data proves it, right? Time and time again, do I hear and see protective parents losing custody as a result of speaking up about their concerns. I've had many cases that I've worked on where my protective parents have lost custody for, at the time prior to my involvement, they thought that the best thing they could do was speak up and help advocate for their child. I think overall we can't protect our children from what we are not seeing. And recognizing the signs of sexual abuse is important. Writing it down, documenting it, right? Keeping a log, having dates with these things are also equally important. But what you do with that information, we have to proceed with caution. For me, if I'm able to maintain that clients that face these circumstances do not lose custody, but maintain 50-50 or more, then that for me is providing protection to the child because they have reprieve. All right, I want to talk about some behavioral red flags that I have heard and seen come up in children who have been sexually abused. And there might be a light bulb that goes off when you hear some of this or think, okay, well, that just seems really obvious. Then maybe it may not be that way for you. Age-inappropriate sexual knowledge, language, play, right? There is information that we can easily find that says that, children masturbating is, normal childhood behavior. There's also information that shows that children who are, trying to tickle another person's private parts, play and engage in that way, can push us to see that the child has been exposed to some kind of unsafe behavior. I have become aware of many different instances of inappropriate type of behavior and play from, mimicking sexual acts, asking the other parent to touch them a certain way, the protective parent to do something because it tickles, maybe reenacting with toys things that they've lived through. For me, mimicking the sexual acts, most people are like, all right, that alone warrants a CPS report. But we all here know that CPS is useless. CPS does not stop what is happening in the home. Most of these reports come back unsubstantiated. That means that they have not found enough information to indicate whether or not this is actually happening. I've seen it turn around on a parent in California that CPS then implemented DARVO and said that this mother must be emotionally abusing the children and was coaching them to say this. That parent unfortunately lost custody, and now the abusive parent has the majority of the parenting time. This is why CPS involvement in these cases is useless. Other behavioral red flags that I see are, sudden mood swings in children, anything that's from rage, fear, being withdrawn, developing new or even unusual fear of certain people, places, refusing to talk about a secret that was shared with an adult, refusing to be bathed, not wanting to have your assistance, even if the child might still be in diapers, or is potty training your assistance in wiping and helping the child clean and have proper bathroom hygiene. We also see a regression to earlier behaviors, anything from bedwetting to thumb sucking. Again, that excessive fear of a person or a place. You might see in children a withdrawal from family, friends, activities that they once enjoyed, drawings that a child might do, or descriptions that are sexually explicit and definitely not age appropriate. Again, overly sexualized behaviors towards either other children or adults. A lot of this information you can find on your own there's a plethora of websites. There's signs and indicators of child sexual abuse that you can easily look up. The physical symptoms, I think, start to show at around the same time of some of the behavioral red flags. And these might be gradual things that we start to pick up on. Pain, urination in the genital area of the child, difficulty walking, sitting, and discharge, difficulty with urination, holding their urine, not wanting to use the bathroom, torn, stained, bloody underwear. If they're coming back from the other parent's home and there's an unexplained, suddenly they're not wearing underwear, and this is a pattern of behavior and you're asking, you're not getting a response, pay attention to that. Changing suddenly of clothing, changing of underwear is included, maybe even during a short visit, and there's no explanation as to why. If your child has experienced frequent unexplained UTIs, yeast infections, in young boys, issues with bowel movements, telling you that their bottom is sore, their bottom is hurting continuously, these are signs that we need to pay attention to. I hate having these conversations. I hate, in fact, when I am the one that points out some of these signs to my parents. And I tell them, right, it is my job to tell you what I am seeing and what I'm hearing. I cannot state that this is actually happening or not, but I do have concerns. However, what I'm going to tell you is going to catch you off guard because the system will not protect you or your child. There's a lot of red flags that physically can show up in these children. Again, pain, irritation in the genital area, difficulty walking, sitting up, difficulty sleeping. We see them over and over again. And so I'm encouraging you to pay attention to the little things that your children are doing. But do not go to CPS immediately. And I'm going to share more about that in a few minutes. Children that have experienced this type of trauma, we'll see depression, anxiety, a lot of nightmares. They tend to have lower self-esteem than other children. There might be changes in their appetite, difficulty with eating. There's going to be a disturbed, disrupted sleep pattern. And this can include, again, frequent nightmares, maybe difficulty staying asleep. And the physical signs are probably the most rare. The ones that I see more frequently are recurrent unexplained UTIs and yeast infections, and the child complaining of pain in the genital area. Most of what we end up seeing is like the behavioral and emotional aspect. And for me, I feel like that's what makes us so hard to prove. And then it becomes easier for the other side to dismiss. I see your question. That's great. I will get right to you. Statistically speaking, okay, every 9 minutes, child protection authorities respond to a report of sexual abuse, right? Every 9 minutes. In 93% of all cases, the perpetrator is someone the child knows and trusts. When I was a child, it was someone that I knew and trusted, a babysitter, my babysitter's son, stepbrother. There was an inappropriate moment that I recall, and I believe my trauma is blocking out the rest of a moment with my own father. There's a question, right? Does court care that the other parent's pattern of letting the child watch TV with violent and sexual scenes, like, do they care about this? And I do think that if there is an ongoing pattern that you have documented of the child being exposed to age-inappropriate things or places is important. Are they going to pay attention to it as much as you and I are? Likely not. But if we can document things that are happening, that the child is constantly being exposed to rated R movies and they're 7 years old, that's highly inappropriate. So documenting it, and also, are we asking the other parent a question about some of this behavior, about this incident that occurred? Hey, I wanted to reach out to you. I have a concern about the child shared with me that they watched. Can you please share with me more information? We have to gather more information, however, other than just an inappropriate scene or movie that the child has been exposed to, for something to be effective. That would not be a hill that I die on in family court. And the reason I say that is because I don't want a family court judge to interpret your actions or your comments of you being a helicopter parent. It's something that I'm encountering more and more of. So the truth about speaking up in family court about sexual abuse, or even being exposed to sexually explicit scenes, movies, violent scenes, violent movies, the system was not built to protect your child. It was built to manage conflict, and these are not the same thing. I'm not sure if you all have heard of Joan Mayer, but Joan Mayer has done some amazing research, and she's a professor at George Washington University's Law School, and is at the center of the National Family Violence Law Center. She teaches clinical law, and it's called Child Custody Outcomes in Cases Involving Parental Alienation and Abuse Allegations. Now, this was a study that was funded by the National Institute of Justice, and it was completed in 2019. So it's still relatively recent. Now, this is not an opinion. This was actually a federally funded study. I want to go over what this study shows us and how this can be applied to help us navigate these really tricky situations in family court. The numbers say this: mothers' claims of abuse, especially child physical or sexual abuse, increase their risk of losing custody, and fathers' cross claims of alienation virtually double that risk. So what happens? What does this mean? We have protective mothers, which most of all of my clients are mothers. Protective mothers are bringing forward claims of child abuse, child neglect, sexual abuse. They immediately have a target on their back. What happens then? Fathers create this narrative of how you're coaching the child, you're alienating the child from them, and that then plays into a protective mother losing custody. DARVO was implemented. The study further goes on, and it talks about how the courts believed mothers' claims of intimate partner abuse only 42.6% of the time. But wait, believed mothers' claims of sexual abuse only occurs 19.4% of the time. So if intimate partner violence and abuse is only believed 42.6% of the time when it comes from women, when a mother brings forward claims of child sexual abuse, the percentage in which they're being believed decreases. Family courts only believed mothers' child abuse allegations less than 1/3 of the time. They believed only 1 in 49 cases of child sexual abuse when the accused father cross-claimed that the mother was alienating. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that I do not like the word parental alienation. It's junk science. It comes from Dr. Richard Gardner, who is not reputable, and it's not something that exists in the DSM-5, but it is used by perpetrators. What it truly is it's domestic violence by proxy, coercive control. Research has revealed that 50 to 73% of cases of child sexual abuse are valid. Yet, Mayer's research showed us that only 1 out of 50 cases of child sexual abuse was believed in the United States. And this happened in family courts between 2005 and 2014. You can get this information and fact check. I encourage you to do so about anything that I say. You can go to End Coercive Control USA. Women who allege abuse, particularly child abuse, by a father are at a significant risk of losing custody to the alleged abuser. Even when courts find that fathers have abused children or the mother, they're still awarding those fathers custody 13% of the time. I'm going to pause here for a second and let that soak in. Do you understand now why I caution you all on using the words child abuse, abuse? He was abusive. We can talk about patterns of behavior, behaviors by the high conflict parent, and let that be interpreted for the behavior itself versus us labeling it as abuse, diagnosing it as abusive behavior. I would much rather keep you and your child safe than not. So everything I just shared with you, you heard it correctly. Even when a court finds abuse has happened, they still give the abusive parent, and this is, again, fathers, custody 13% of the time. Right? So what is going on? We know that it's DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. It is the weapon that is used against you. It's important that you recognize DARVO. I'm going to explain to you what DARVO is because I want you to start normalizing that this is something that you're likely going to experience. It doesn't make it okay, but it's important that we know knowledge is our power. So the moment you speak up about abuse, right, the script flips. You must be ready for it. DARVO, again, stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. It is a reaction that perpetrators of wrongdoing display in response to being held accountable for their behavior, right? So the perpetrator denies that the harm ever took place. When even confronted with evidence, they attack the person who reported the harm. Finally, the perpetrator claims that they are actually the victim, reversing the position of victim and offender. Now, how common is DARVO, Bridget? I'm glad you're asking. There's one study that found that DARVO was used by 72% of perpetrators when confronted over harmful, concerning behaviors. 72%. That's really high. We all can agree. The offenses ranged from, social mistreatment to interpersonal violence, including sexual assault and child abuse. I can sit here and tell you many stories of things that I lived through, how DARVO was implemented in my case. I'm going to tell you how to recognize DARVO and help you strategize and think a little outside of the box of how you can potentially stay ahead of it. So, how does it show up in cases that I handle that maybe your own case. Denial, right? It's, I never touched the child that way. I never hit the child. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know. It must have happened at your house. The attack. She's coaching the kids. She is crazy. She is mentally unstable. She goes to therapy. She takes a lot of medication. She's only doing this to alienate me. She's only doing this so that the children also hate me. Reverse. I'm the victim here. I'm being abused. She is weaponizing the children against me, right? In the reversal, what are we seeing happen? Projection. The closest thing you'll ever get to a confession is what they are accusing you of, right? So they are saying, hey, in this reversal, not that they're the victim. They know that you're the victim. They know that you're the victim. They know what they're doing and that they are weaponizing the children against you. And then to top it all off, right? This parental alienation counterclaim is filed. Protective parents are losing custody, which prompted research into whether parental alienation claims were being used as a weapon and defense against abuse allegations, right? So Joan Mayer's findings confirmed that mothers' claims of abuse, especially child physical or sexual abuse, increase the risk of losing custody, and the father's cross claims of alienation virtually double that risk for the mother. This is not accidental. This, in fact, is legal strategy. And when you go into court emotionally reactive, screaming as to what he has done, not being able to stay composed, and ranting about all of the abuse that you have endured or that your children might be experiencing, you are handing your perpetrator exactly what he needs to paint that picture. This is why I caution you. There's a trap, right? There's a trap that we all can walk into, and it's the protective parent trap. I want you to stop trying to prosecute the abuse in family court. I want you to stop saying that word abuse as often as I know you'd like to. Instead, I want you to shift, and I want you to focus on what the court can actually measure. And what is that, right? It's your ex's behavior and the impact that that behavior has on the minor child. When we talk about abuse, it directly backfires. The courts, as I'm sure you know by now, aren't trained to assess trauma or sexual abuse. They're trained to assess parental fitness overall. So the more emotional you are in presenting your case, the more it reads alienation to court. The pseudoscientific theory of parental alienation lacks scientific support. There is no data that supports parental alienation claims, okay? But nonetheless, it is a key vehicle for family court's rejection of women's abuse allegations. It is the vehicle by which family court is going to continuously not recognize the abuse that is actually going on. Approximately 1/3 of mothers alleging a father's abuse lose custody. 1/3. When dads are counterclaiming with alienation, that 1/3 now increases to 1/2. Okay, that's 50%. I want you to not go about this fearfully. I want you to remember, hey, I am on a mission. I have the knowledge that will support me moving forward in family court. I am capable of presenting my case using different words. I am capable of presenting my case showing a pattern of ongoing behavior from the high conflict parent. Stop trying to prove what your ex has done. Start proving the impact that it has. How is the court likely going to respond? Okay. When we are documenting behavioral changes in the child, this is going to move the needle in family court. Is our documentation time-stamped? Are we specific? Is this coming up consistently? Are there medical records other professional records that exist, pediatrician notes, therapist observations, school reports. What is going to support the impact that we're seeing on the child? Are you keeping track of violations of your court orders? The reason I want you to track the violations of the court orders is because it directly goes to attack your high conflict ex's credibility and overall parental fitness. That's why you'll see, and maybe you've lived through it, that your ex's attorney will maybe send an intimidating letter to you. If you do not comply, if you do not do this, and what they're doing is maybe misinterpreting the order as it's written. But those letters, that communication is very telling. They're giving you their cards. They're telling you what they're going to do in family court against you. Use it. But also, are you seeing the strategy? They are going to try to focus on how you're violating the court orders, even that may not be true. It's what they're going to try to do. So you shift and you're going to start to document the violations yourself that the other parent has. And I'm sure you've got a long ass list. What are your communication patterns like? Are you using BIFF? Brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Are your responses written in the BIFF format? What do we see? When we start to focus more on our communication, this becomes really important evidence in our case. We start to see you're not engaging, you're boring in your communication, and an escalation from the high conflict co-parent. We kind of want them to escalate. We want them to lose their shit because they're handing you your case. Pattern of behavior over time, right? I say this, really feel like in my brain, I am like a broken record, right? So this is just not one incident. This is a documented pattern of behavior that we're seeing over an extended period of time. Not just for the past week, the past month. When you're trying to present some of this information, you should have no less than 6 months of a documented pattern of behavior. When you're documenting things that maybe the child has said and done, you need to use your child's exact words, in quotes, date and time it was said. What are the behavioral changes that you observe before and after visits, right? Are they saying, "Mommy, my tummy hurts. I don't want to go"? Are they crying, throwing a fit, a tantrum before going to the visit? Are they withdrawn when they come back? Do they say, "Daddy said this. I hate you, Mom. Why are you not," right? What are the attacks that you're getting from your child when they return? Have there been any disclosures? Any disclosures of, something that is concerning that would be sexual abuse? If your child, and I've been working on a lot of these cases recently, right, where a child is presenting with ongoing complaints in the genital area, difficulty with urination, irritation, screaming to sit in the bathtub, not wanting assistance wiping, and this child is being potty trained. What I've done in that situation is I've told my client, I want you to take the child to the pediatrician or the urgent care and say, "Hey, this is what's going on. I'm not sure what's happening. I'd really appreciate some assistance," right? "I don't know if maybe there's an infection or irritation. Can you help me?" You don't want to draw any conclusions. You don't want to tell the pediatrician what you think it is that's going on. I would share if there's other behaviors that are happening. Like, "Hey, I saw this and this is happening and they're complaining of this. I'm not sure really what's happening, but I want to make sure that they're getting the help and support that they need." Okay. That is going to generate a medical record. That medical record is paper trail. That is evidence in your case, right? So you're not accusing the other parent of doing anything. You are simply following protocol. The child presents with a concern. You would do the same thing if the child presents to you and they're sick, right? High fever. You would take them to the doctor. We're going to do the same thing in this scenario. And the expectation is the documentation is going to speak louder than your overall emotions, louder than anything else that you could say or do. What do we do if the child discloses, right? I've given you a little bit of brief information, but how we respond in the first 48 hours of that disclosure, I feel is really important. I don't want you to interrogate your child. Let them speak, let them share whatever they want. You can ask open-ended questions. Can you please tell me more about that? Oh, can you please share with me more? Do you know why you might be hurting? Did you bump yourself? Did you hurt yourself? You're going to write down what the child says. Again, exact words. Was there anybody else around when this was said by the child? And you're going to report this to the pediatrician the same day, right? I mean, if you were to look up on the internet and Google what to do in the instance of a child disclosure, you're going to find that Google tells you to immediately report to CPS. I want you to take the child to the pediatrician and let the pediatrician determine what the next steps are. It'll be much better for you, right? When we take them to a pediatrician, it creates obviously a record, and that tends to be harder to dismiss than just your word, your own testimony. If your child is not in therapy, I encourage you to get your child with a licensed trauma therapist, one that, is obviously trained for helping your child navigate trauma. Maybe they have experience in forensic interviewing, but definitely we want them to have a vast amount of knowledge and training and work in child trauma. I don't want you to tell the other parent. I don't want you to say, the child has said this to me. Now, is it valid to send a message to the other parent and say, hey, a child came home and they are having difficulties urinating. I'm going to take them to the pediatrician for them to get examined. Yes, that's sharing information. You could also ask, hey, do you know if there's maybe any reason this might be happening? Do you know maybe they did something different? I've actually had pediatricians tell some parents, it's the bubble bath, make sure they're not taking a bubble bath. While this can be true, if we are dealing with recurrent UTIs, recurrent yeast infections, there's something else going on. Do not post anything on social media. The internet is forever, and when you're in litigation, they're going to go at your social media. Just don't do it. It's not a smart move. Children who disclose sexual abuse may later recant. This is very similar to victims and survivors of domestic abuse. I recanted because I felt bad for my abuser. I recanted because I was intimidated that if I didn't, we were going to lose our home. He was going to lose his job. Poor thing. Why would he have to be in jail for 48 hours because he abused me, right? Research indicates that exposure to overall pressure from family influences us recanting. And that goes for your children. Maybe your child at one moment says to you, hey, dad hit me. And maybe you talk about it the following week. Hey, are you doing okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? Yeah, no, I don't know. I never said that. I don't know. Everything's fine. Children, however, are less likely to recant when family members believe them. They're more likely to recant when family members express disbelief and the alleged abuser is still in their lives. To me, it's like a survival mechanism. Coming from now an adult child who lived through many things, I did everything that I needed to do, everything that I could think of to survive the abuse that was going on in my home. I didn't want to have a target on my back, that my stepmom was constantly hounding me. I didn't want to be in trouble. I didn't want to be hit by my dad, by my stepmom. I didn't want to be denied food, denied access to my mom. So what did I do? I adapted to survive. I started doing and saying what my abusers wanted so that I could stay out of trouble. Your children are no different. They're doing the same things. If recantation happens, document that as well, right? But if you understand the why it happens, this is not going to be surprising to you. Always, always, always strategy over emotion. And I'm going to say something hard. The family court system was not built to rescue your child from a predator. It was built, right, to manage two parents in conflict. That's why the family court system believes that both of you are part of the problem the majority of the time. So you have to build a case inside a system that wasn't designed for what you're experiencing. This is why it is so damn challenging. When I'm coaching clients, I break down some of the framework into like 3 little bite-sized pieces. And I'm going to apply that same framework to what we're discussing today, right? Which is sexual abuse. You can apply it in any area of anything that's happening in your case in family court with your abuser, with your ex. So we're going to document everything that shows behavior. We're documenting his behavior, not our feelings about his behavior, not our interpretation of his behavior. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to involve third-party neutral professionals, right? In this scenario, with sexual abuse allegations, any SA allegations, we want to let the professionals carry that. Your job is to get your child to the right professionals and create a paper trail showing what you did. If CPS gets involved, it's not because you involved them, but a third-party neutral professional did, because they're mandated reporters. The third thing is you've got to keep your communication so damn clean that it could be read out in court and you're not going to feel embarrassed. You have to use BIFF. Please do not use gray rock. Do not use yellow rock. Use BIFF every single time. Everywhere. You're going to use BIFF with your attorney. You're going to use BIFF with the mediator. You're going to use BIFF in your testimony, in your documentation, in your communication with your co-parent. The abuser is counting on you to fall apart. They're counting on you to get emotional because they've seen this before when in the relationship. And because of that, they believe that they can make you look mentally unstable. So learning how to adopt silence strategically and not show those emotions is a game changer. Our documentation is extremely powerful. Your calmness is by far the most dangerous thing that you can bring into the courtroom. Not letting their attorney get a rise out of you. Not interrupting someone when they're speaking because, you're so anxious. You just want to get the answer out. I want to give you all credit and provide resources where you can look up additional information about the things that I've shared with you. This is not my research. This is research of experts in the field that have come before me. Joan Mayer with George Washington University Law School and the National Family Violence Law Center. RAINN, RAINN.org. It contains child sexual abuse statistics. StopItNow.org provides us with behavioral warning signs. Center for Judicial Excellence tracks family court failures and child fatalities. Dr. Jennifer Freyd, she coined DARVO in 1997, the University of Oregon. And by far the person who has trained me in recognizing high conflict personalities and how to communicate. Bill Eddy with the High Conflict Institute on BIFF Communication. If you have ever found yourself in this situation with your child, I'm very sorry. As I'm holding back tears here, I want you to know that I believe you every time we have conversations about this and you reach out to me. I believe you. I know the tools that your ex is going to utilize to discredit you. And I want to just remind you of how amazing of a parent you are by doing all that you can to educate yourself and to keep you and your child safe. I'm so proud of you for showing up, for learning, taking notes, and growing. And I will see you all again next week. Until then.